Elon Musk, one of the greatest minds of the 21st century, has forever changed the technology industry and space exploration. With impressive successes from Tesla, SpaceX, to Neuralink, Elon Musk has not only inspired millions of people, but also left behind timeless quotes. Today, let's explore the top motivational quotes from Elon Musk about successful entrepreneurship and how to overcome challenges to become a tech mogul. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. The first step is to establish that something is possible, then probability will occur. I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. I could either watch it happen or be part of it. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. You get paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of problems you solve. The path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. If you're not progressing, you're regressing, so you have to keep moving forward. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. Life is too short for long-term grudges. I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact. There have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. If something is important enough, even if the odds are against you, you should still do it. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better. Keep questioning yourself. Starting and growing a business is as much about the innovation, drive, and determination of the people behind it as the product they sell. I've actually not read any books on time management. Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in 80 to 100-hour weeks every week. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. Great companies are built on great products. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. The factory is the machine that builds the machine. I think it's possible for ordinary people to be extraordinary. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic. I say something, and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. The only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. Rockets are cool. There's no getting around that. I think the best way to attract venture capital is to try and come up with a demonstration of whatever product or service it is, as fully fleshed out as possible. You want to be extra rigorous about making the best possible thing you can. I always have optimism, but I'm realistic. It was not with the expectation of great success that I started Tesla or SpaceX. I don't believe in process. In fact, when I interview a potential employee and he or she says that it's all about the process, I see that as a bad sign. There's a tremendous bias against taking risks. Everyone is trying to optimize their ass covering. Talent is extremely important. It's like a sports team. The team that has the best individual player will often win, but then there's a multiplier from how those players work together and the strategy they employ. The goal of a company is to create a product or service so good that people will pay for it. In order to have your voice be heard in Washington, you have to make some little contribution. You want to have a future where you're expecting things to be better, not one where you're expecting things to be worse. I think we are at the dawn of a new era in commercial space exploration. My proceeds from PayPal were $180 million. I put $100 million in SpaceX, $70 million in Tesla, and $10 million in Solar City. I had to borrow money for rent. A company is only as good as its people, and how excited they are about creating. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. For all the problems that technology causes, the biggest one that it eliminates is boredom. I think you have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness, to make sure it continues into the future. The problem is that the world is full of people who want to take shortcuts, who don't want to think critically. I'd like to start a university someday that has no tests, lectures, or other conventions. The goal would be for students to learn because they want to learn, not because they're forced to. I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. When Henry Ford made cheap, reliable cars, people said, "Nah, what's wrong with a horse?" That was a huge bet he made, and it worked. Really pay attention to negative feedback and solicit it, particularly from friends. Hardly anyone does that, and it's incredibly helpful. It's very important to like the people you work with, otherwise life and your job is going to be quite miserable. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. In the early days of aviation, there were a lot of accidents, but there are fewer accidents now because it's been worked out through experience. You have to say, well, why did it fail? And then that's when you begin to learn. I think it's important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. Good ideas are always crazy until they're not. The point of all this is to make life multiplanetary and have a base on the moon and Mars. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. Optimism, pessimism, fuck that. We're going to make it happen. As God is my bloody witness, I'm hell-bent on making it work. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. It is a mistake to hire huge numbers of people to get a complicated job done. Numbers will never compensate for talent in getting the right answer. If the rules are such that you can't make progress, then you have to fight the rules. The tougher the challenge, the greater the reward. My mentality is that of a samurai. I would rather commit seppuku than fail. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. Your will is the most accurate way to predict the future. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. You have to be ready for the possibility that you're not going to win. Even if there's a zombie apocalypse, you'll still be able to drive a Tesla. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. You need to have a lot of passion for what you're doing because it's difficult. Without passion, you will give up. If you need inspiring words, don't do it. The only way to do it is to do it. It's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short. The reason I started SpaceX was to get humanity to Mars. Don't confuse schooling with education. I didn't go to Harvard, but the people that work for me did. It's better to approach challenges head-on than avoid them. Elon Musk is not just a leader, but also an inspiration for all of us. His quotes are not merely words, but a guide to help us step into the future. So, which Elon Musk quote has inspired you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss more inspiring quotes.